And now I'd like to introduce Thais Alvarez. She's a tax attorney, an educator, and writer, and we're very excited to have her teach us more about the Common Core standards and what we can do to deal with them. Thank you, Thais.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I really do appreciate the size of the crowd. It's very nice to know that I've been working really hard and putting all this stuff together for the past couple of months, and that I'm going to be able to share it because I can read about it, we can all read about it, and we can gather and complain about things, but if we don't really go out there and do something about it, nothing's going to get done. So now, what are the Common Core state standards? And this is one of the things that I think parents want to know, because you're going to have proponents. There's always going to be a proponent for a cause, for anything. And in this case, I've got in blue here the what they're going to tell you. Okay, so these are the things that they're going to tell you. And by the way, I see some people taking notes. If you want to, you shoot me an email and I give you my PowerPoint. It's not copyrighted. My mission here is to educate, and if you can educate further, I'd be happy. So they're going to tell you that these are a national set of English and math standards, and that's kind of like linked to the second blue point, which is that they're modeled after rigorous international standards. First of all, let's break through the fallacy of the first point: standards versus curriculum. For a lot of people who are not in education, you might be wondering, well, what's the difference? Standards, curriculum. Well, think of the standards as being the broad, umbrella, and then you've got the curriculum, which is the stem of the umbrella where you hold it. Now, the federal government, and this is why this is important, the federal government is prohibited from developing curriculum. Follow me on this, okay? But what happens? These people are so smart that they're trying to bypass federal law. And they're saying, okay, fine, since we can't dictate as to curriculum, we're going to create the umbrella, we're going to create the standards, and we're going to create the assessments. And I'm going to discuss that in a little bit, okay? But so what happens, if you've got the standards and you're going to test on the standards, curriculum is going to flow from the standards. So basically, this is illegal. And I'm going to get to that in great depth when I talk about the legal aspect. So basically, who is developing these standards? These standards are being developed, and again, look at the way that they try to fool us. Achieve is a corporation. Ooh, wow. Okay, I guess it's already upset that this is happening. Achieve is a corporation that is working under the auspices of two nonprofit organizations. And notice the names, okay? Notice the names. National Governors Association, keyword is governors, and the next one is Council of Chief State, emphasis added on the word state, school officers. Now, governors and state. Why? Because education is supposed to be a state matter. It's not supposed to be a federal matter. So in order for them to fool us, they are calling these nonprofit organizations that are developing these standards, assessments, and in a very indirect but direct way, the curriculum, they're trying to fool us by giving these organizations these names. Now, that's point number one. That's what they're going to tell you, and this is what you're going to tell them back. Now, let's move on to the second point, international standards. These international standards are not international at all. In fact, they had, I'm talking about the Common Core Standard website, had listed this on their website, that they were internationally backed. They had to take that off their website. And the reason why they had to take it off is because they could not substantiate that, because it's false. And you've got experts which tell us that these international standards are actually a few steps behind what is being taught across the world in higher performing countries. The third point, ability to compare student performance. Proponents are going to tell you, well, we need common standards so that we can assess what all the students are doing all around the United States and compare them. Well, guess what? We already have a mechanism in place for that. We've got, in grammar school, they give students the National Association of Education Progress Standardized Test. And as we all know, because I remember still taking my SATs, when you're a junior or senior in high school, you take an SAT or you take the SAT to go on to college or the university. So we already have that in place. Why are they telling us that we need this? Again, they're trying to fool us. Okay, let's go on dispelling the myths. So the next point over here. This one, I mean, this is ridiculous, but they're gonna tell you that they're gonna facilitate the transition for students who move from state to state. Well, it's only 2% of the population that moves maybe from Florida to Texas or from New York to California. So what about the other 98%? So we're gonna implement something, which by the way is gonna cost us billions of dollars, and I'll get to that in the cost part of this analysis, for 2% of the population. Doesn't make, at least it's not selling it to me. Now, the next point, students in countries with nationalized standards perform better. Yes and no. And again, as with everything, we need to look at things in context. Okay, we can't take things out of context, because when we start doing that, we start manipulating facts. So what do I mean by that? Let me give you an example. Finland. Finland is a country where they do in fact have standard national standards. Everyone's got the same thing, but if you're looking at my PowerPoint, there's a really big difference between the United States and Finland. In the United States, we've got 300 million people as opposed to 500 in Finland, number one. And number two, and probably more importantly, I think that in Finland, the 5 million, okay, are uniform in terms of lack of diversity. The opposite is true of the US. Again, context. So we've got 300 million people, all of which, not all of which, but many of which are different and have different needs depending on where they are in the US. Are we really going to give everybody the same treatment? I don't think so. Again, education should be local to deal with local communities and their specific needs. Now, I'll give you an example of a country where they've got really bad education, even though they've got nationalized standards. Cuba, right? They're not doing too well, but yet they have nationalized standards. Now, I'll give you an example or two of countries that are doing better than we are, that don't have nationalized standards. And we're looking at Canada and Australia, two pretty decent countries, okay? So this whole thing of we need to have standardized or nationalized standards, not necessarily true. And now, another thing I want to tell you about context. They're going to tell you that the United States is ranking 27th in the world. Again, we need some context. Here in America, when we participate and allow our scores to be judged on international levels, we are testing ADHD, mentally disabled, homeless, believe it or not, yes, there are homeless students, disadvantaged, and students who are in ESOL. That's students who are foreign students who are learning English. All of these students are taken into account. Take a country like Finland that doesn't have that kind of diversity. Some countries leave out certain segments of their students that we include, who clearly bring the overall score down. So again, I'm urging you, try to look beyond what they tell you, because it's not always going to be what it appears. I can. Okay, now, these are some pretty egregious things. And if you notice at the title here, we were talking about a stealth campaign. Okay, this was done in a very sneaky, insidious manner, okay, when nobody was looking. Most people didn't even know that this was going on. Now, if you look over here, how did they adopt this? Governors, in our case, it was Governor Christ, he signed off on these standards, and I'm going to get more in more detail later on. He signed off on this before they were even written. Now, if I would be the governor, if the people would elect me to fill such big shoes, I can tell you one thing. I am not going to sign anything unless I read it. Okay? Well, not only did he not read it, they weren't even in existence for him to read. And I'm going to be fair. I'm going to be fair. It wasn't just him. It was all the governors who signed it, because at the time that the states were strong-armed, and I'm going to get to that when I get to the how this happened part, when the states were strong-armed into this, they didn't have them written. I mean, this is pretty crazy, okay? But this is the way that our government is working nowadays. Of course, they're trying to fool us. They're telling the people that this was purely voluntary, okay? This isn't voluntary. Why? Because if you don't agree to the Common Core State Standards, you know what you're not going to get? You're not going to get any money. Thank you very much. Okay, mind you, that money is our money, the taxpayers' money. So they're taking your money, billions of dollars worth of your money, to use it against you and to blackmail you that if you don't do what they want you to do, they're not going to give you your money back. Again, it just smells bad all around. And if you guys can't see that, well, I hope that by the end of tonight, I'll be able to achieve that. Okay, lack of transparency. Administrators, teachers, parents. Abigail was speaking as to the Florida statutes and how the Florida statutes empower parents and children. Well, guess what? They've bypassed that. They have basically looked at our statutes and they've said, oh, you know what? We don't care. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do what we want. No transparency. And I just think that that's just outrageous. But we're going to get more to the legal aspect of this when I get to the legal overview of why this is so illegal from the top to the bottom. Now, parents are like, well, what are they going to teach my kids? That's what they want to know. So now I'm going to, within part one, I'm going to tell you specifically what the standards and how that's going to translate into curriculum. What can you expect to be taught in the classroom? Well, the first thing that I want to tell you is that we've got Dr. Milgram. Dr. Milgram is a mathematician working for Stanford University, and he was asked to be on the validation committee. The validation committee is where these, I hate to use the word people, but where these people were sitting. And these people who were sitting here, the validation committee, to approve or disapprove of this, only 2 of them were educational experts. 2. Everybody else, can anybody guess what they were? Anybody? Not attorneys. They're part of these corporations like the National Governors Organization, Achieve, the In Bloom, which is going to data mine your kids. And we're going to get to that. And I'm going to help you connect the dots tonight, okay? So he refused to sign off on the math standards. And the reason why he refused to sign off on the math standards, he said, well, you know what? I know at this point that over 35 states have agreed to this, but I'm still not being sold on this because when I look at the actual standards and I compare them to our current standards, generally speaking, or I compare them to international standards, this is why they had to pull off and away from that whole international claim, he's like, I'm just not seeing it. On the contrary, I'm seeing that right here, and this is a quote, that the Common Core standards are roughly 2 years behind. So our kids are going to be graduating, he estimates, from their senior year in high school, they're going to be graduating with math at the 10th level. And that's due to several reasons. For example, algebra. Algebra is currently taught in 8th grade. They want to push it back to 9th grade. Why would you do that? If anything, you want to introduce these concepts when children are younger, when their brains are sponges. That's what you want to do. I know that I was already looking at that kind of math when I was already in 6th grade. And now they want to push it to 9th grade? Geometry. They are going to use an experimental method to teach geometry, which, mind you, it's not so experimental, and the reason why it's not is because it was used in Soviet Russia, and it failed. They actually had to pull it out of the schools because it turned out that it wasn't panning out for the kids. So, not good, okay? And I have a lot more detail to tell you about things in math and English, but I don't have time and I don't want to bore you, okay? Because it would really be too heavy. I have a different version of a PowerPoint that's a lot longer. But if you email me, I'll be more than happy to email you the long version, and you can go through it at your convenience. Okay, so the English standards, we've kind of got a ditto situation, but with Dr. Stotsky. Dr. Stotsky, she was a former senior associate commissioner in the Massachusetts Department of Education, the only other expert of education sitting on the validation committee. She too refused to sign off on the Common Core state standards. Doesn't that tell you something, Mercy? Doesn't that tell you something? Okay, if these experts are refusing to sign off on this stuff, she's telling us worse than in the case of math. And I'm not surprised. They don't want us to know how to read, okay? This is the dumbing down of America. She's telling us that in her professional opinion, not mine, okay? I've got a lot of quotes here. Her professional opinion, children are going to be graduating from senior year in their 12th year in high school, their senior years, reading at a 7th grade level. That is pretty pathetic. Okay, now, and this is gonna cost us a pretty penny. Now, I'm gonna try to go through this rather quickly. Why are the kids gonna graduate at a 7th grade level? Because they're gonna pull out the classics. All of British literature, of which I remember having a whole year in high school dedicated just to British literature my junior year in high school, wiped out. The only British lit they're gonna get is Shakespeare. And at that, okay, Romeo and Juliet. I read the entire book, Romeo and Juliet, had to do a book report and whatnot. You know what our kids are gonna get in school about on Romeo and Juliet? Okay, I can't do these two things at the same time. They're gonna get an excerpt, which is, that's it, 3 pages. 3 pages from Romeo and Juliet, that's it. So all of the classics are being wiped out, and instead, in lieu, they're gonna put informational text. Does anybody know what informational texts are? They're not standards that let students go into depth on subjects of literature. And well, this is a prime example right here, okay? How are you gonna get children to develop their focus if you're just giving them little pieces of things? And that's basically what this curriculum does. It gives them little pieces. But I had a question, and my question was, does anybody know what informational texts are? Or can you guess what propaganda, thank you very much. So kids, and I have another example because, you know, I don't want you to think that I'm just making this stuff up, okay? I'm not. This is like real stuff right here. We've got the keynote address from the 2004 Democratic National Convention from Barack Obama. Now, is this literature? I don't think so. And you know what? This has nothing to do with Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians. That's not my point. This is a language arts class, okay? They give a longer speech from Barack Obama than they give Romeo and Juliet. So they're gonna give kids executive orders to read, environmental documents, and of course, if you know anything about Agenda 21 and the objectives of Agenda 21, you would see why they would want these kids reading these things, but if you don't know, and I can't get into that detail right now, you won't be able to connect that dot. That's why it's so important for us to educate ourselves on all these issues. John Casey, okay, John Casey, he's a scientist who worked for the US government, and he basically tells us here in this article that he has been reviewing these standards on science, and it's fuzzy science. Fuzzy science. There's no scientific basis for it, and it all basically has to do on the environmental part of it. And in addition to that, you've got experts reviewing the current textbooks. Here I have another article, and they're telling us that the math is fuzzy math, and they're trying to eliminate cursive, and as far as history, they want to start teaching history after 1865. Okay, again, let's connect the dots. Why do they want to start teaching history, American history, after 1865? Because they don't want people like me standing in front of people like you who are interested, telling them about why things like this are not constitutional. Data mining. Okay, talking about the Constitution. Data mining is a violation of the 4th Amendment. Okay? Data mining is when somebody tries to take data from you, okay? And that's what they're going to be doing to our children. They are going to be trying to take data under the guise of education, okay, from our students. Now, I want you to keep a question in mind as I'm going through this section. You're going to be asking yourselves, is it in the place of the schools to be doing this? The answer is no. But you're going to keep asking yourself that. Or is it in the place of a school to teach my children how to think? Okay, we are missing the boat here as to what the purpose of education is. They are trying to use our schools, I'm going to tell you that right now, and I'm going to connect the dots for you, to extract data. And let me go ahead and pull that point up for you over here. If you look over here on the left-hand side, they're going to take over 400 points of data from our kids. Not only the academic and the disciplinary record, but the family income, the religious affiliation, your voting affiliation, okay, or your party status, medical conditions, learning disabilities, all kinds of stuff. Now, this is dangerous, and at the same time, It's marketing. They're taking it for two reasons. Let me tell you about the marketing first. How many of you have gone to like Google and Googled to buy something online? Like for instance, I've gone to Amazon to buy a book, and then I log out and I log back in, and then on the right hand side, the advertisement, the same thing that I was looking for, now they're advertising it to me. So I just, if you haven't seen that, at least I see some heads in the audience bobbing, yeah, okay? So I don't want you to think I'm making this stuff up. For those of you who haven't seen it, that's data mining. They took a piece of information from you, okay, and now they're using it to market to you. So they're gonna take your children's info, your info, either directly from you or through your children, because your children are not suspecting that they're up to any harm, right? They're gonna give them everything they want. Oh yeah, you wanna know this about my mom? Oh, you wanna know that? Oh yeah, they're gonna give it all up, okay? And then the government is gonna sell this data to other marketing agencies, okay? And they're gonna make money off your data. Let's connect dots here. You've got Obamacare. You've got the Second Amendment issue. He got a knock on his door. We came for your guns. Why? Well, because now we have in our medical database here that you got prescribed this drug at your doctor, and guess what? Now, according to law here in the state of New York, you can leave it on the floor. In the state of New York, now you cannot carry a gun anymore, but I'm fine. So imagine, you know, my dad's over here, so I can lie to all of you, but I can't lie to him. Okay, when I was little, right? Once in a while, I get called to the office, right, Dad? Okay, so imagine. Okay, and I do have a concealed weapons permit. I do carry. I like guns. Okay. I don't know. I just thank you. But more importantly, I like shooting them. So, anyways, this is my point. Let's say that when I was, I don't know, 6, 7, I was rebelling and whatnot, like I did. Like I'm rebelling now. Do you see, there's a common thread here, because this here is reflective of when I was in school and a teacher would do something that's not fair. I'd raise my hand. Well, I'm doing it now, but now it's against Big Brother over there, right? So they write that down in my record, and this thing follows me all my life. And now I'm an adult, and I want to go get my concealed weapons permit. And what are they going to tell me? Sorry, Miss Alvarez, when you were in 6th grade in Utah, I believe it was, or somewhere, parents were not able to opt out of this. A lot of parents think, oh, I'll be able to opt out. No, and I'm going to give you a real life example where the government is going to share this with In Bloom, which is like a marketing company. They're going to share this with the Department of Education, Labor, Health, and Human Services. Link all of that together to what I was saying. Now, this is something that a father found in his child's book bag. I am willing to give up some of my constitutional rights in order to be safer or more secure. Now, how many of you would want to give up your constitutional rights in exchange for the new religion of security? For you, we've got Mary Black. She's basically saying that data mining strips children and families, parents, from their Fourth Amendment right, their privacy. And a lot of people, again, I want to underscore, oh, I'll have a chance to opt out. No, you won't. Okay, she's saying that through testing, which I'm going to get to in a minute, they will be extracting this data from the kids. And this is that minute that I was talking about. What do we have over here? We have, and again, I'm not making this outrageous stuff up, because, you know, they love to say that people like me are conspiracy theorists. This here, let me start with the front, the cover. Isn't that the way that they always introduce books? We've got here, Promoting Grit, Tenacity, and Perseverance, Critical Factors for Success in the 21st Century, written in 2013, coming to us, big fat book from the Department of Education. And if you go to, this is what I've spent my summer doing all this research. If you go to page 44 over here, okay, what I have projecting on the screen over here is right in here, coming to us from the Department of Education. Now, what are we looking at? We're looking at a facial expression camera, a posture analysis seat, a pressure mouse, not a regular mouse, a pressure mouse, a wireless skin conductance sensor. And put together, all of these things are going to be extracting information from your child while he or she is sitting at a computer in school, measuring the blood pressure, their reaction to certain questions, their emotional response. Now, grit, I looked that word up in the dictionary, okay, because I just, I wanted to make sure, and I like words. So I looked it up, and basically I found it to be really interesting. And when you look it up in dictionary.com, it says firmness of character, the spirit of a human being. Okay, she has a reputation for grit and common sense. That would, I would hope, be me they're talking about. Okay, now grit, why does the federal government, why do schools need to measure the grit that I have in my body, like in my essence? Why? Isn't the purpose of me going to school to be taught how to think, period? Not for them to be trying to analyze how I'm wired. You get where I'm going with this? Okay? It doesn't smell good. And that wrist stuff, I don't know, I'm a little claustrophobic. I don't know if I could deal with all that stuff all over my body. Like, anyways, it just kind of like looks creepy, doesn't it? Let's move on. Talking about creepy, this is a picture that I took from an article that was published in The Blaze. This happened here in Florida, in Polk County this year. I'm not sure if it was May or June, but it doesn't matter. It was at the end of the school year. I don't know how many students, because I'm not good remembering minutia, but how many? 750 students in Polk County had their irises scanned. And this is the kicker, okay? Parents were supposed to have a letter sent home where they would give parental consent for this. Guess what happened? Oh, the school forgot to send the letter. How convenient. So then when the parents found out, there was outrage, and supposedly they deleted all these records. But do we know for sure? Okay, God only knows what they do with that information that they take from us. I mean, really, this is going way above and beyond, okay, the function and the purpose of education. Nobody has to convince you of that. At least I wouldn't think so. Okay, so these are the outrageous Fourth Amendment constitutional violations that are going on. How many of you find this alarming? Okay, I find this alarming. Good, I'm glad you guys are still awake. I know it's late and you've probably been working all day. Okay, now, who designs the Common Core State Standard assessments? And you're gonna see how this is all connected. We've got the standards. Remember I told you we've got the standards? Well, we need to test to see whether or not the students were able to grasp those standards. And of course the curriculum that flows therefrom. And so we've got over here, who's designing them? Okay, I know some of you are gonna be shocked by these names. Linda Hammond and Bill Ayers, okay? These are the people who are designing these exams, and this is all related with Bill Gates and the Bill Melinda Gates Foundation. I've got a few more outrageous things coming your way. Hopefully those things will keep you up, although I really wish we didn't have to worry about this. Now, David Coleman. David Coleman is the president of the College Board, and the College Board is basically the organization, company, what have you, that designs the SATs. The SATs are being modeled already after the Common Core State Standards. So again, the reason why I'm trying to hone this point is because we are going to be subject to the state standards whether or not we want to, because the kids are going to be assessed with these things. Now, a lot of people, when I start telling them about this, they shrug it off and they're like, well, my child's in private school. I homeschool my kid. Oh, my kid goes to a Catholic school or a Jewish school. I don't have to worry about that. Not quite, okay? Emmett McGroarty from the American Principles Project points out, and I'm quoting, nationalizing curriculum standards quietly knifes the school choice movement in the back. And again, why? I'm trying to make a point here. The assessments. The standards are going to be assessed by companies that are developing the tests from the federal government. So there's no way around this, because you want your child to do well in school, right? The only way that your child's gonna pass those tests is if they teach to the test. And that's, again, another problem with the FCAT. I've given you a brochure. Teachers spend so much time teaching to the test, that there's so much other stuff that kids are not learning. So if you think some people are safe, no one's safe with the Common Core state standards. Who's designing them? You're probably not going to remember this, but just to throw it out there at least once, if you haven't already heard it, so that you're familiar with the terms when they talk to you about them. Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium and the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness and College and Career, otherwise known as SB and/or PARC. In fact, and I'm looking at some of the people who were with me at the school board meeting in Dade County, there was an agenda issue on PARC because they were going to, initially, I believe, vote for it. In other words, vote for PARC to, in fact, do the assessment for Dade County. So this is very much here, guys, and that's why at the end of this presentation, I'm going to ask for your help, because this isn't about prevention, this is worse, this is about attacking this cancer. Okay, now what is the cost of implementation? I know all of us are going to wake up now, okay, because if you guys want to keep money in your wallet, this is going to wake you up whether you want to or not. It's estimated, okay, that this is going to cost 16 billion. But before I get there, okay, how did this start in terms of financing? The initial financing is coming from Bill Gates, and you're going to see why. You're going to see exactly why, because I'm going to connect the dots for you. And the Federal Department of Education through the Race to the Top grants. So they've been throwing money. They've been throwing money to achieve, to develop the standards, in Bloom, to do the data tracking databases. They're throwing money to the assessment companies so that they can develop the assessments. Money, 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 our money, okay? And that's just the beginning. But what happens when all this money runs out? What happens when Bill Gates says, you know what? I'm done with my capital outlay here. My investment part of this project is done, and now I'm ready to reap the profits. And the federal government basically says, sorry, we don't have any more money. Well, they're going to look to us. We are going to finish financing the rest of this, as they call it, unfunded federal mandate. This is, again, an unfunded federal mandate. It's coming to us from the federal government, but we're paying for it. How much does it cost? Before I even get into the 16 billion mark, I want to highlight that we don't really know how much this is going to cost. Okay, that's the real truth. We don't really know, and the reason why we don't really know is because states never really had a chance to figure out. This was not done. Again, this is not only irresponsible governance, but this is also irresponsible financing on the part of the government. And of course, we're the ones who are going to get the shaft. Okay, in November of 2009, look at how irresponsible this stuff was. In November of 2009, I told you the governor, Chris, was given this thing to sign off that wasn't even written. That was in November. He had until January of 2010. So November, December, January, 3 months to decide whether or not the Common Core state standards were going to be adopted or not. So in 3 months, do you really think that even if you have the intention of figuring out what hasn't been written, how much it's going to cost to implement what hasn't been written, do you think we're going to be able to figure out how much it's going to cost? Of course not. So, I'm trying to stress that we don't really know how much this is going to cost. But they're estimating, and they are the Pioneer Institute and the Accountability Works organizations. They're estimating that it's going to cost around 16 billion. And when I talk about these numbers, we're talking about nationally. I'm not just talking about Florida. So we're looking at 16 billion for everything. One-time costs, 10.5 billion. The first year after implementation, 503 million. And then throughout years 2 and 7, and I want to emphasize for each single year, year 2, year 3, year 4, so on and so forth, each year 801 million. Okay, that is what it's going to cost. And the federal government is only willing to give us $4.35 billion. So 12 billion is going to be coming from the taxpayer. Again, an unfunded federal mandate that we're going to be paying for. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, well, why do we have to pay 16 billion? What's up with the 16 billion? Remember I told you I was going to help you connect the dots with Bill Gates? Okay. Well, these assessments that I've talked to you about already, they're all going to be administered on computers. You got the picture here? So, massive computer upgrades. They want one per child. You see how he's going to get his investment back and then some? Manpower to setting up the bandwidth, manpower to maintain the technology and deal with troubleshooting. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm constantly troubleshooting my computer. I know you are too. So databases, again, to take and extract the data. Larger schools, because now if we're going to have a computer per child, we need bigger classrooms. Okay? I know that they had teacher developments this summer. That costs money, all these trainings. Okay? And well, currently, they spend around $5 a year testing students. Well, with these assessments, they're predicting, and I read that this was a conservative estimate, they are estimating that it's going to cost like $22 per student, more or less, to test them every year. That's about $15 more. Who's going to pay for that year after year after year? Your property taxes. Okay, how many of you have heard enough? Okay. Now, the Sun Sentinel from Orlando basically says that, hey, this is not happening. There's no way that we have the money for this, but I'm not going to sit here and read quotes to you. You can read them on your own if you want. Okay, which states are fighting to remove the Common Core state standards? Okay, we would be remiss if we didn't give credit to these two ladies up here and the governor of Indiana. That's where it all started. Okay, these two ladies go by the names of Erin Tuttle and Heather Crossan. These ladies had their children, and I want to emphasize this, in private Catholic schools in Indiana. Private Catholic schools. They already implemented the Common Core state standards at the time. They started seeing, and if you look at the right-hand side, okay, that's what they started seeing. Instead of asking the kids, you know, to do math, like how much is 4 plus 4 and come up with 8, they were just asking the kids to explain, well, how do you do these math problems? And another mom was seeing that instead of bringing like, you know, actual science books and textbooks and whatnot, they were having like these Time magazine for kids, which are a joke. You know what I'm talking about? Kind of like these jokes over here. An excerpt from Romeo and Juliet instead of the real deal, okay? So that's the kind of stuff they started seeing. They started questioning it, and that's how they basically realized what was going on. Well, Indiana was very successful, and okay, these ladies, along with attorneys and a group of people, activists, managed to have the pause bill passed, where the state legislature said, okay, you know what, we're going to take a pause, we're going to evaluate this before we actually implement this or let it keep running wild, because too many red flags have been raised. And that's what they're trying to do here in Florida. But I will tell you, and that's why I'm here, not just to educate you, but to try to mobilize the foot soldiers, as I want to call them. If we don't start going to school board meetings like we did, and we don't start protesting this against the school board, I don't see how this is going to be uprooted. Okay, but I'll get more to that later. But you guys need to start getting nervous, and you really need to start thinking of, you know what? Let me take a little bit of my personal time to address this, because if I don't, and I think someone else is going to do it, no one's going to do it, and this isn't going to go away because it's already here. So this is just, you know, a little filler here if you're curious. The states that never bit are the proud states. They said, no, we don't want any Common Core, keep the money, you're not going to bribe us. And then we've got the laundry list of states that's fighting this tooth and nail on the right. Now, let's go on and move on to our next topic. So why are the Common Core state standards illegal? They're illegal because, and I'm going to start from the top, okay, under the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, education is not listed as an enumerated power. Okay, so it's not something that the federal government should be doing. And I've already touched on the Fourth Amendment in light of the data mining, so I'm not going to go over that again. And then you've got the 10th Amendment, which basically says, okay, well, if it's not a power that goes to the state, to the government, it's gonna go to the states. And this is just over the top. We're not gonna get too heavy into any analysis. You also have a US Supreme Court case that originates in San Antonio. I believe it was an independent school district of San Antonio versus Rodriguez, which affirms that, yes, in fact, education is a state matter. And then we look further to the to the Florida Constitution, which generally says that the state shall be responsible for educating the children within its borders. And then even more specifically, you've got the Florida statutes, which basically say that even within the state of Florida, education will be, and I'm using the word I'm quoting, decentralized, because every school district is going to dictate what will happen in that local school district insofar as education is concerned. So we've got the Florida statutes telling Miami-Dade County Public Schools that they should be developing the standards, the curriculum, and the assessment. And I'm telling you, this is on video. They're telling us, and Luz is shaking her head, they're telling us that they can't do anything because these are orders that are coming from Tallahassee and more so from the government, the federal government. So now I ask, why are you sitting up there if you don't even know the laws that govern your elected position? Why are you representing us in the school board? This is disturbing. I'm sorry, it's disturbing. And that's basically why this is illegal. And the elected officials are just messing it all up for us. Now, over here, the Department of Education, and this quote is coming to us from the Pioneer Institute white paper. This is not my interpretation. This is an independent agency that studies this with a group of attorneys. They say that the Department of Education from the federal government has simply paid others, the National Governors Association and that other long list of whatever company, I can't remember what that had state in it. The Department of Education has simply paid others to do that which it is forbidden to do. This tactic should not inculcate the department against curriculum prohibitions imposed by Congress. So in addition to all of the laws that I just read, the Constitution of this, the US Supreme Court that, in addition to that, there are 3 federal statutes, okay? The General Education Provision Act, it's in red, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, and the Department of Education Organization Act, which if you ask me, we should dismantle the Department of Education. It doesn't serve a purpose. Thank you. Thank you. It really doesn't serve a purpose, okay? And other than to do what it's doing now. And these 3 laws, clearly the letter of the law, which I'm not going to read to you, but you can ask me for the long PowerPoint and I'll send you that version, and I quoted it there. The federal government shall not dictate as to curriculum or as to assessments or as to the development of any library materials. Again, they are trampling all over the Constitution. The constitutional republic, I hate to say this, it's dead. The 3 branches of government are being violated, okay, as if it didn't exist. It's really, really, in my opinion, disgusting. I'm not going to read this, but the gist from the title, I think we can figure out the intention of the founders. The reason why the founding fathers didn't make a lot of things centralized is because they feared what's happening. And what's happening is happening because the spirit of the law is not being respected. Not only the spirit, but the letter of the law. I mean, okay, so I like to throw in little pictures here and there, to just cartoons here. I'm here for your children, and this is the case for education without representation. So some people like to say that Common Core is education without representation, and this is why. Because we, the people, are not able to dictate what's going on. States are losing control, parents are losing control. Okay, again, education without representation. So how did we get here? I've kind of already alluded to this a little bit as I've been explaining all of this. But and there's a big, and I cut that out of this presentation because again, I don't want to put you to sleep. This is the history of it. But this is where it starts. And then I cut out a big chunk and I fast forward to 2009. So don't worry, we're not going to go from 1995 every year until 2009. But in 1995, there was the Senate Resolution 66, and the vote was 99-1, where they weren't able to pass these history standards. And basically, they said that they were un-American and that they were politically incorrect. And the lessons that the people who are behind this movement learned is to not call them national or federal, hence Common Core state standards, to impose them quickly and quietly. How many people even knew that this stuff had already been implemented? And to not start with the history standards because it would be too controversial. So these people are definitely not stupid, okay? And they learn quickly. We need to get with a program. We need to start learning about what they're doing. So another little cartoon to wake us up here. So if Common Core is not a federal program, then why are states threatened to lose federal funds if they opt out, right? Good question. It is a federal program. And we're gonna go through this quickly because I've pretty much already covered this. So in 2009, in November, when there's a recession going on, not that we've really gotten out of it, the applications are sent out to the money-hungry states, and they're told that by January 2010, they have to sign it. They signed it irresponsibly. Charlie Crist signed it. By 2010, they were finally written and released, and in August of 2010, states were given 2 months, okay, to convince the local school boards to take it. Okay, now, who wins and who loses because of the Common Core state standards? Now, this is really interesting. I saw this, I'm gonna give credit to FreedomWorks, to this lady by the name of Whitney Neal. I actually saw this at her presentation in June in Orlando, and I was like, oh my God, I need to have that PowerPoint, because I was flabbergasted to think that American corporations are actually doing this to their own people, all for a buck. And mind you, that buck with every passing day is worth less and less thanks to the Federal Reserve. But that's a different topic for a different day. But yeah, they're trying to impoverish us. So you've got here a teacher standing out in front of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. When you really look at the broad picture and you connect the dots, you can see it so clearly. But you really have to know about all the issues to be able to get it, really get it. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Seattle teacher says, thanks for nothing. Okay, so who's gonna benefit? You've got the creators on the left and the developers on the right, Gates Foundation, the Ellie Board Foundation. Now listen to this outrageous quote. I had to leave this here. The CEO of GE, General Electric, who's in favor of this, says, quote, state-run communism may not be your cup of tea, but their government works. As to suggest that, hey, let's do communism. This is the kind of stuff that works when everybody's just another brick in the wall. Okay, for those of you who like Pink Floyd. Developers, we already talked about the National Governors Association, Janet Napolitano, at the time that this was going on, okay, she was responsible for developing the benchmarking for success standards, and the Council of Chief State of School Officers. So again, some names here in red, I'm sure you won't be surprised. Jeb Bush, okay, Michael Bloomberg, Oprah, Warren Buffett, all these people are in this stuff to profit. Now, who's going to get sold out? The parents, the students, the teachers, campus administrators, central office administrators, school boards, at least school boards that care, will get sold out. City councils, community leaders, state Congress, and last but definitely not least, taxpayers. Now, this is the most important part of the presentation. If you leave here and do nothing, you're having been here, unless you got somebody else to do something. I don't want to say it was a total waste of time, because nothing's ever a total waste, but let's just put it in a more positive way. If you sat here and you leave here and you do something, the fact that you sat here is going to mean a lot more than if you don't do anything. And I'm an example of that. I'm actually fighting this as much as I can every day. So what can you do? Okay, these are just some little things here. You can go to Facebook. For those of you who are social and like social media, go to, and again, I'll email you this to you. You go to the Facebook group called Stop Common Core in Florida. Number 2, visit Florida Parents Against Common Core. Florida Parents Against Common Core. If you just Google Florida Parents Against Common Core, this website's gonna pop up. On the right-hand side of the website, there's a petition. Okay, that petition is for that pause bill that I spoke about earlier, urging the legislature to please pause this. Don't let this go forward. Then right below, you're gonna see another button that you click and you are linked automatically to write the governor, the current governor, Scott, an email. It seems that Governor Scott is in favor of this, and we're not surprised, right? Okay, Bush, not all, conservatives and people who you would otherwise think are into smaller government are in fact for smaller government because they have a conflict of interest with the pocketbook, right? So they're for smaller government as long as it doesn't put their donors in a bad situation. And I'm a capitalist, okay guys? I believe in capitalism, but at the same time, I don't believe in abusing people and violating the Constitution, again, for the sake of making money. There are certain things that are sacred. What else? Those are just little things you can do, but now we're going to get into the more heavy-duty stuff. Okay, you can contact your local legislature. You want to call your reps, you want to call your senators for the state of Florida in your district. So if you don't know who they are, you're going to go to the www.myfloridahouse.gov website, put in your zip code, and you'll get them for your zip code. And then wow, thank God that thing stopped. And then you're going to do the same thing for the senators, www.flsenate.gov, and then there you put in your zip code and you get the ones for your area. You don't have to tackle the whole state. Tackle your area. And you know what? Try to find people in your area and try to see if you can go visit the reps and senators in your area as a group. You're going to be much more effective if you show up as an army than if you show up as a soldier. Okay, what else can you do? Local school boards, and this is, I'm gonna beg you, okay? Here I'm gonna get down on my knees, okay? No shame. Please, 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 if you can come out with us to the next school board meeting, we need you. They walked all over us. I was escorted out by police. I stood up and I said, those are all lies, those are lies. And well, I was escorted out, but I just couldn't sit there. I couldn't sit there. So, yeah, it's pretty sad. Okay, to organize the army to show up at the school board meetings, and if you can, I know some people out there don't work. If you don't work and you're retired or you're independently wealthy, okay, that's not my case. I'm still gonna take the day off work to go do this, but if you can afford to go to both counties, even if it's just to show another body in support of the fight against this, please, I can't stress that enough. Number 4, local schools. If you have children, okay, or even if you don't have children, get a 5-mile radius. Try to target the elementary, middle, and high schools in a 5-mile radius in your neighborhood. Again, if it's 2 or 3 of you and you go there and you're like, listen, I want to talk to the principal, okay? And finally, in addition to going to the school board meetings, bombard the school board members with emails and phone calls. I've tried calling them. I even sent them an invitation here. I sent it to both the Broward school board members and the Dade County, and before I say anything that's not true, are there any school board members here? If you want to contact me, I'll be more than happy to send this to you. And if you want to contact me and volunteer yourself, especially for those school board meetings where we're highly intimidated, I would be grateful. And I know that your country and the children would be grateful.